in the midst of showing off how great these tools are, how fast you can create content, or how well you can do this as an AI writer, don't forget the purpose of why you got into this in the first place. I'm still the content writer, the copywriter who loves to tell stories. This is just one way that I can do it better.
Welcome to the AI for Creative Entrepreneurs podcast, where we guide you through the ever-changing landscape of artificial intelligence. I'm Kira Hug.
And I'm Rob Marsh. We're the founders of the Copywriter Club, and our goal is to help you stay ahead of the curve when it comes to AI. We're going to show you how to use all these new AI tools to maximize your creativity, simplify your work and life, and reinvent your creative career so that AI works for you and not against you.
So whether you're a copywriter, marketer, or creative professional of any kind, join us as we explore the intersection of AI, creativity, and career. Is this cheating? As writers and creatives, we're so protective of this craft. So when we start using tools like ChatGPT and writing becomes increasingly easier, it's nearly impossible not to feel like we're cheating, maybe just a little bit, which is part of a nuanced, longer conversation around what it means to be a writer in 2023. And we can't wait to kick it off with today's guest of the AI for Creative Entrepreneurs podcast, Brad Bartlett, an AI-empowered copywriter and content writer. Brad dives into the fascinating world of using AI-powered writing tools like Jasper and ChatGPT in his copywriting process. We also touch on the benefits these tools offer, but also highlight the limitations he's encountered, such as content coherence and sense-making. Brad also reflects on the symbiotic relationship he's developed with these tools, where sometimes it's really hard to differentiate between his own writing and the content generated by the AI tool. When the line becomes blurry, it's hard for many of us not to quietly ask ourselves, am I still a writer? We'll tackle this existential question and many more in this episode, so stick around.
But before we get to that interview with Brad, this podcast is sponsored by AI for copywriters, content writers, and creatives. That's our new course/adventure about using AI and specifically ChatGPT to get better at what you do as a writer. Things are changing so fast in the AI world, so we created this short course to help you get up to speed in as little as a single afternoon. And what you'll get in the course is the 10 different things that you need to know before you start writing a prompt so that what you get isn't drivel. It's not direct, it's usable. There's 5 lessons or modules that will help you understand generative AI and ChatGPT, including one about the legal and ethical risks. It's really important to understand that, and it could save you a lawsuit down the road. More than a dozen lessons with demonstrations of various prompts and how to use them, and we are adding to those almost weekly. There's a prompt book with 109 plus more. We're adding more prompts every week as well. Different prompts that you can use, borrow, steal, rewrite, and use in any way in your own business. With these in your pocket, you're going to be ready to use AI in your business today. There are 29 different ways to use ChatGPT in your writing. We're going to suggest a few ideas that maybe you haven't thought of before, and a toolkit that includes links to 92 different AI writing tools. And we just added a prompt one-pager that you can print out, keep on your desk, that will help guide you as you write prompts for ChatGPT and other generative AI tools. To get started with this course, go to thecopywriterclub.com/AI4C, the number 4, AI number 4C. Okay, let's kick off our episode with Brad Bartlett.
So, Brad, how did you get into AI? What was the moment? Take us back in time.
Take us back in time. Yeah. So I've been a tech head for a long time. I was raised, my grandma, was one of the first to ever invest in like Nintendo back in the day. And she like got me into technology from an early age. And so I've always been really interested. I was the guy who created like 6 different Zynga accounts back when it was cool to write online and have all these blogs and find ways to like do digital communication stuff. So I've always been really interested in the space and kind of how it's evolved over time. And it was when I made a shift. I spent several years as a pastor, actually, in pastoral ministry. And COVID ended up kind of killing off the church I was at. And in the midst of that, I had been doing the side hustle of doing some copywriting and content writing, kind of feeling my way around that niche and trying to figure things out on my own. And they just converged and took off in a crazy way. And one of the first places I remember reading online, I can't remember who it was saying, hey, if you're going to be a successful copywriter, you need to niche down. You need to find an emerging market, figure out how you can get into it, and then start becoming the expert on that area. And at the time, I was doing a lot of just general copywriting. So it was a dentist office this day, it was a plumber that day, kind of stuff. And I was like, well, I keep hearing this conversation about cryptocurrency happening and NFTs are starting to become a thing. And I was kind of in a few communities online with that. And so I was like, I don't know, we'll see if we can find a niche in this area. And I started writing articles for a few Web3 companies, kind of talking about the new movement towards emerging technology and NFTs and cryptocurrency. And in that, I just happened to stumble upon AI, generative AI, as a tool for generating content. And I was hearing a lot about this open AI, this chat, or not, wasn't Chat GPT then, but it was this GPT-3 technology that had just been released. And I could hear people talking about, oh man, this is going to change everything. This is incredible. Well, in that space, everything that's ever announced is like a world changing, groundbreaking technology. And so I'd become used to going, okay, let's dig in and figure it out and see if it's legitimate. And so thanks to their stellar SEO, I connected with a product called Jasper. At the time, it was called Jarvis. It was Jarvis AI. And they had developed a generative AI tool where you could basically communicate what you wanted this tool to write. And you hit enter and you just watch as it just wrote completely unique text based off of what you were writing. I think at the time, their tool was focused on more marketing, so you're having like mission statements, brand voice and tone, marketing tools, things like that. You could write a Facebook post. And it was kind of wonky and you had to kind of really massage it to get something good out of the system. But I remember thinking, this is pretty impressive. And if it's really legitimate, this could change the market forever. And so that was kind of my foray into the AI world, was with them.
Yeah, so let's continue that story then. First exposure to Jasper, it's wonky. Yeah, it's cool, but that was kind of my experience. The first time that I tried it as well, I'm like, yeah, but it's a lot of work,
Yeah.
a lot of the back and forth. And so I didn't implement it into my business the way that maybe people are doing with ChatGPT, and that I've started to play around with ChatGPT. So let's go from that first exposure to where you are today and how you're using AI now.
Yeah. So honestly, part of the reason I became more adept at using it was, one, I got lucky. I mean, there's a lot of weird lucky points in this story where I was able to become a founding member of Jasper's product. And so I wasn't, because I put an investment in on the front end, I didn't have to get bound by their credit system. So it's like, oh, it made one bad thing of copy and I'm out of credits for the next month. So I was able to really play with it a lot. And this was about the same time that I was doing the typical copywriter flaw of going, I'm going to take on every single project I can get. And I don't care how many it is. I'm going to do them all because I don't know if tomorrow, the sky will fall. And this was right when COVID was still happening. And so, you're always afraid that your business is going to fall through. So kind of out of necessity, I forced myself to learn how to create content really quickly and really well using the tool. And I had no idea this was going to become something that would be a major conversation point down the road. I thought that it was just like this other secret tool that I had found that helped me write copy pretty well that I could then go back and edit more quickly and use that with. And so today it's, I know, Rob, we were talking before we started recording about having almost like a little writing buddy on the side. And that's really just generative AI in general. I use about 3 or 4 different products that all kind of operate the same, but they all offer different capabilities and different output. You can tell when it's like, this is good and this is just first this, second this, third, and you're like, this isn't good content. And so I move around between different tools to try to get different content. At the beginning, I probably was using them to generate a lot of content. And today I typically use it as my first draft brainstorm. So I'll go into a document and I'll start typing some ideas and say, give me a summary, or give me a bullet point of this content, or I'll take another product. If I'm doing a product review, I'll take the product's description off of their website, paste it into the document or the tool, and then say, give me a bullet point summary of the main features of this product and why a customer would enjoy using it. And it gives you a really good summary using some of the language and terms that the content already uses on their brand page. And so it's just another tool. It's a tool in the stack that I use kind of seamlessly now, like I would use Grammarly or Google Docs or whatever. So it's become a pretty major part of my whole process.
Yeah, and I definitely want to talk about how you're using it today in more detail, but just to go back to when you started using Jasper initially, you mentioned it felt like a secret weapon. Can you just
Yes.
talk more about like the secrecy behind it? Because I do feel like, writers have been using these tools for a couple of years, but they weren't really, not all of them were talking about it openly. So how did it feel like a secret?
Yeah, I mean, I think what it was it just felt too easy, right? So it felt like, you'd be on Twitter, you'd be in some of the, I mean, out in the copywriter club, I was in the accelerator and we're talking with other people in our accelerator groups. This was probably spring of 2021 or fall 21, spring 22. And I remember talking to somebody, and they're like, yeah, I mean, a good 1,000 word article for a brand would take me about 4, 5, 6 hours with the research and the writing and the editing. And I was sitting here going, I mean, once I bring the research together, I can use this tool to write this content in like an hour. And then it's another hour or so of editing and fine tuning and double checking and reading it out loud, my usual stuff. But I was like, is it real if I'm doing it so much faster than everybody else is? And then once Chat GPT came out, you started seeing some of the people were vehemently opposed. They were like, this is taking away the legitimacy of our trade. This is ruining the process. You're never going to get good content out of this. And I was thinking, I've been getting really good content out of this for a long time. I feel like if you know how to use it well, you can actually take advantage of it. And it doesn't, from what I thought, I was like, it doesn't degrade the quality of the content. Clients are happy. We're seeing results. It's converting customers, whatever we're doing with it, it works well. But even to this day, I still struggle a bit with that. Like, is it cheating? Is it cheating to use it? Because it's very similar with generative AI in art. They're like, you're not drawing that. Well, I'm not drawing a graphic on a computer if I'm using Photoshop, but so those things still kind of rumble around of like, am I a real writer if I'm not writing it? At least the first draft.
Yeah, that's a really good. Am I a real writer if
Yeah.
I'm using AI is a great question. So, to be specific, so Brad, tell us what are the tools that you're currently using? Are you still using Jasper, using ChatGPT? Are there others that you're playing around with as well?
Yeah, so in my stack that I use Jasper. I've been a founding member of theirs. I was actually earlier in February. I was out in San Francisco. They had a Gen AI conference where they brought in a lot of people, and I got invited as one of their founding, first members to come out there and be part of that. So I still use that heavily. I use ChatGPT here and there. I've mostly used ChatGPT just to write about ChatGPT. I haven't used it a ton for my own content. Jasper, probably in the last 6 months, released a chat like feature where you can actually chat in the very same way and get a lot of the same outputs. And you have to deal with a lot of the downtime that Chat GPT has had. And so you get faster access to that. I've used one called Longshot AI as well as Go Charlie. There's one that's like a cute little white dog is their logo, and they both offer some good outputs as well. Uh, for me, finding the tool has really been about finding the use case. And so with Jasper, I'm able to use it for long form content. And obviously, that's like the top tier. You have to pay for it. But be able to write long form content, to just put out a lot of content at once that I can go back and edit later. Go Charlie, Long Shot, I think Write Sonic are some of the similar ones, have been really good for short snippets of, I need a user profile. Give me a few headers for this web page, this landing page, or a few different pieces of information I can use in an email sequence. Those have been good for really getting marketing side of things down. So it really depends on the tools that you use. And so those are the main ones. ChatGPT, I've gotten more used to using that one because a lot of people are also using it and they want you to be able to converse in that range. And so yeah, those are kind of the ones I mainly stick to right now.
And how do you talk about it with your clients? When you're working with clients, how do you refer to using these tools? Does it come up at all?
It does occasionally, if they're aware of it. That's the main thing, and I think they're way more aware of it now. And this is where I become really passionate about is the concept of AI literacy. So, how do we talk about AI? How do we understand AI? I was actually at this conference in San Francisco. We had the very last session. It was all developers, so it was a lot of like, how does the language processing work in the background, and these things that are like way over my head. And the last session we had was with Jasper's, I think, head of marketing. And she had this really good session on AI literacy and how we talk about it. And she's like, this could be a race to the bottom. It could be like a lot of things where we just totally utilize and take advantage of the tool to the detriment of the potential of the tool. And I think a lot of what we're seeing is in the response to that, especially if you go online and just start looking around, clients are noticing. And I used to never hear about AI. And now clients will come to me and say, this is what I want. In our first consultation or discovery call, they'll say, this is what I'm wanting. And they go, by the way, are you using AI? Because AI, I don't want that. It's not good. And Google will hurt you if
Oh,
you use
wow.
AI for any of your content. And so I have to stop and go, okay, hang on. First off, what are you asking really? Are you asking, do I use AI to write non-original plagiarized content? Is that what you're asking? Or are you asking, do you use AI to write any of the content in general? And what I usually find is that the clients tend to be a little bit unaware of how the system actually works, how the tool actually operates. And there's a fear because they read some tweet thread or an article that if you use generative AI content, Google will unarchive your or will take down your site, it'll take down your page, it'll penalize you, you'll never be seen again. And so far, from what we've seen from Google themselves, it's just not true. They want helpful, quality content, which you can get from using AI. And so that's a long way of saying when I talk to clients about it, I try to take the opportunity to educate them and say, yeah, I use this as part of my tech stack. I use this as a tool like any other tool. Now, I can guarantee you that you're going to get this kind of quality from me, and this is the results you're going to get. But at the end of the day, if you really want a non AI driven piece of content and you want me to avoid that, we can have that conversation. It will take longer, and I can show them, the amount of time it might take, and say, but you're still going to get the same amount of quality both ways. So at the end of the day, it's how soon do you want the content done? And that's what it comes down to.
Okay, so let's talk about how you're using the tools in your business today. And I mean, I would love to get right down to like prompt level,
Yeah.
descriptive functions that you're asking for, like, because so many people have tried the tools. I mean, my first experience with ChatGPT was, okay, this is cool, but it's pretty basic. If you're writing it at a basic level, you're in trouble, but most of us, are capable of more creative thought. My thinking on that has changed a bit as I've
Yep.
played around with it and as I've talked with other copywriters who are doing different things. So, what are the tools, the prompts? What is it that you're doing to get great content out of these tools?
Yeah. So that's what it comes down to. It honestly comes down to how you understand the system and how you use the system. And so, just for example, I'll walk you through this morning. I was working on a landing page. I'm working on a landing page for a hair salon in Houston, Texas. I'm a man who has no hair. So my hair salon knowledge is very limited when it comes down to some of this information. I have a beautiful wife that knows a lot about hair. And so I can ask her, I can go online, I can read things about hair. I can go to their website and see kind of because they're wanting a website redesign and they want to raise their SEO rankings in the area. And so, I could go to their website and read up on it. What I'll do is, and I did this morning. So I have kind of the website page that I want to do. It could be a service page for hair extensions, and I know the keywords I want to use, and I know what kind of the general. I have my framework that I use for kind of helping create conversion centric copy. So the first step I'll do is I'll write out a little bit about them. I'll say, here's my general user profile. Here's the client profile. Here's who they are and what they offer. Here's who they're trying to reach and what those people's pain points are. give me, and this is where the prompts come in. I'll say, write a series of headers for a landing page for this website. Boom. I'll hit that. And the more specific I can get, the better it's going to be. And so I'll say, give me 10. And then down the page come 10 of these, pretty, unique and interesting headlines. If I don't find one that sticks out to me at first glance, I'll say, rewrite these in a witty tone or in a funny tone, because they can read, the tools can read the tone of voice that you want it to say. And I mean, you can go crazy with the tones. You can write like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Donald Trump. You can go Gary V. You can go all sorts of ways with it. And so I'll play with that until I find something that, as a reader, it sticks out. And I go, now that's interesting, or that's funny, or however I think that the client's customer wants to see it. So that gets in my header. And then I'll go, I'll delete all that. I'll put in the header and I'll say, write a series of short descriptions that could sit under this header for this landing page. And I'll let it run, and it'll give me a series of different, short little snippets of copy. Typically, and it only goes as far as it understands. And so it will keep going until, you'll go, okay, it's not understanding what I'm asking. So I'll start over and try to reword it. But then it'll eventually give me a few really good pieces of copy that I can go back and say, wow, okay, actually, and this happened this morning, I'd never thought about explaining it this way. And so I'll use that as kind of my baseline. And from there, typically I'll start going on and I'll start kind of writing my own content, and I'll use it back and forth if I get stuck or if I need a little bit of creativity. And then honestly, my favorite part of the tool, whatever AI tool I'm using for content, is to say, give me a series of really engaging call to action phrases. Boom. It'll spit out the call to action phrases based off the content that I've already fed into it. And I already have pre-made call to action buttons or call to action text that I can use throughout the landing page. It's varied, it's interesting. And so some of those, because I'm really good at the long form content, I am not good at the 60 character content. And so to have that utility for me makes a huge change. I'm not spending minutes and hours trying to think up the best way to say contact us now in 5 different words. And so yeah, it's just a back and forth. It's a flow. It's a relationship between me and the system. And eventually we come out with something that's pretty good.
So it sounds like it is really that back and forth of like using the tool, getting started, and then, putting your head down and writing maybe the lead for the landing page, and then going back to the tool for some bullet points. It's like, what is the balance? Did you just feel it out as you're working on a project where it's like, okay, I think I can just write for a little bit and get something out, and then, okay, I need the tool now?
Yeah.
How do you know?
Yeah, it's a huge, I mean, it's unique to each individual thing. And honestly, it's unique to the deadline. If things are really pressing hard and I feel like I can get some good content going for a client that we can have a back, because a lot of these are back and forth revisions and things like that. It's never a final piece. And so I feel a little bit less pressure there to have a perfected piece, from it. But if it's a longer term project and I'm talking back and forth, it'll be a lot more me kind of using the tool occasionally, sparingly, depending on what I need from it. But yeah, it honestly has become kind of hard to differentiate now, to be honest, which is kind of unique and kind of scary to know exactly, like, when I look back at this content, I'm like, okay, how much of that was me? I think all of it was me, because I was reading and I was engaging with it the whole time, and I was deleting some things and restarting some things. And so it's kind of become this like symbiotic relationship with it. And I think it's not till you go back in retrospect that you think, was that ethical? Was that okay? In the moment, you're like, this is just an incredible tool that I can use to help me kind of free clutter out of my own brain and get things on paper and get things on the screen. And so it's hard to find a balance, but I think that it's just become a little bit more gray area there. But at the end of the day, I always check, I always go back through, I read it out loud to make sure it makes sense, because it will get wonky. And this is where a lot of the critiques come when people use tools like ChatGPT or Jasper or something, and they just go click send or click publish, and they go, and you can look through Twitter threads where people are like, look at this terrible content. This is never going to take off, because it's because there wasn't an actual creative mind going back through it and trying to make sure it made sense, that it was engaging, that it wasn't just a bunch of run on sentences. And so being able to know how to use it, yeah, like I said, is such a unique part of it.
So, as you're talking about some of those limitations, I'd love to dive into, particularly with Jasper, because I'm less familiar with that tool in particular. But like with ChatGPT, there are character limits. You know, you at say 4,000 words, you start to run into
Yep.
issues with memory. Particularly with the free version, I think it's better with the paid versions. What are some of the limitations with Jasper, and where does it get hung up and require you to jump in and start to, redo work or fix it, go back, re-ask some of the same questions? Like, what are those hangups?
Yeah. And what Jasper's done is they've been, and I think one of the reasons they stand out as a unique software solution in that space is because they've done a lot of work to help educate their users. They have like a Jasper University. You can become Jasper certified by going through and watching the videos, because there's a methodology of using it. Because I think that we see such natural flowing content come out of the system that we forget that it's still just a machine that's thinking logically in a sense of like, if X, then Y. If X, then YZ. And so depending on what you put into it and how you understand how it works will change what you're getting. And that's where I think frustration comes pretty quickly for a lot of users where they go, I'm not getting anything out of this. It's terrible. For Jasper in particular, and I think this is similar for a lot of tools that go back to the OpenAI protocols as kind of they're all reaching back into that. The biggest issues I found, one is, and it's gotten better, and Jasper's really good at this, is uptime. So uptime of the solution, especially since ChatGPT came out, OpenAI's solution has been heavily bombarded and used a ton. And their team will be the first to tell you that they're fighting off, bots that are trying to use the system constantly to generate just random content. And so, you have to kind of be aware that, yeah, the day will come when you sit down to work in the morning and the tool's not going to work. It's not going to be there. So you have to be able to start writing again from hand. And which that's one of the craziest parts is when you go back and you're like, I don't know if I remember how to do this. Where do I start if I don't have like a prompt generator?
That's a little scary. You've become absorbed into the board,
Yeah,
and yeah.
exactly. You're like, how do I start? I have to actually use the keyboard again, So uptime is part of it, but as far as utilizing it, you have to be able to know how to converse. Like I've said this before, you have to be able to converse with the machine almost to continue to get good content. One of the perfect examples is that if you say, and I'm trying to think of a good way of showing an example of this. If you put in, okay, this is one I had a couple weeks ago. This guy called me up and said, "Hey, I work for this watch company. I need a for 2023 buyer's guide for the best Rolex watches." Okay. So if you were using the AI tool to go in there, one, the first limitation you're going to face is that it's only read the internet up to a certain point. And what point that is, it changes depending on who you're talking to. And I know GPT-4 is coming out, which will have better access, and they've got new APIs that can read the internet so they can find accurate information. But even with that, you're limited by what the computer or what the AI will read based off what's out there. So if I were to go, give me a list of the top 5 uh, Rolex or top 5, traditional watches of 2023 based off of these characteristics, and you could put in a couple characteristics you were looking for, it would give you back a list. Now, you don't know, if you don't know watches, if that list is actually legitimate. You could probably assume that the watches, like the names and the series numbers, were right, but you have no idea if those watches are actually good because you haven't gone in and read the reviews. It's gone in and looked up what it thinks are the best resources online to pull in information and say, here are 5 good watches. It's not biased. It doesn't know. It's just reading based off of what a bunch of other websites have already created content to say these are the best watches to buy. And so you have to be ready to double check everything that it pulls back in and go, is number 3 on this list actually a good watch? Is number 4 on this list actually a real watch? Because it'll sometimes confuse itself based off what it's reading. And so understanding that it is not infallible, like there is going to be incorrect information coming back to you that you have to double check. That's the other limitation. And it's gotten much smarter in the past 2 years. I mean, the first iteration of Jasper, it was Wild West. I mean, it would straight up make up stuff. It would get what they call like hallucinations, or it would just like get creative and start making up, names of watches or something. And so that's one of the main limitations. The other limitation I would say is it's iterative. So it wants, especially Jasper and the long form content builder, it will continue going back because it wants to know how you want the content written. What's the tone? What's the style? And it wants to continue to keep it within that style as it goes. But what it'll end up doing is it'll end up repeating itself. And it might have unique elements in each section, top 5 watches for 2023. You'd go back and look after it wrote it all out for you that each one says, first, the blank watch offers a versatile set of features that most buyers will love. And then it'll explain something. And then number 2, it'll say the blank watch is a versatile watch that offers features that buyers will love. And because it's thinking, because you haven't stopped it or changed anything, that this is what you want. And so it just continues to put out the same kind of content, and like it'll be unique, but you have to understand how to go, oh, hang on, go back, let's start it with a new phrase, or let's rewrite that phrase, or let's add in a new word to it. Because then you come to the end, and sure, it's 5 different watches that may or may not be real, but the explanations within that are all identical. And that's where Google's going to go, this is generative content. You are not actually writing this. This is just a data set being fed. So those are the 2 limitations, I think. And then when it comes down to practical, and Rob, you might be referring to the practical limitations, it's just going to be usage. So, I mean, you're going to have to pay a pretty penny to get unlimited usage. You're going to have to pay to not use up all your credits that you have for a specific tool if you want to get. And you might get bad quality content come out that you can't get those credits back, and that's why knowing how to use it is so important.
And that's linked to Jasper, right? Jasper has the credit system currently.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And most that I've used outside of ChatGPT use some form of credit or licensure. Like you either get a certain number of credits to use per generative content, or you get a certain number of like system uses. So like I want to make a Facebook post, well, you'll get like 6 a month or something like that.
Okay. So what is the upside for you and your business? What has been the upside? Because, there are some downsides. There are definitely some questions you've asked yourself around, am I still a writer, which we can talk about, but you're still using it for a reason. How has it benefited you and your business?
Yeah, for me, it's been the speed. It's been the speed. It's been the ability to create content at scale without having to scale my business with personnel. I think that is a crossroad that many copywriters, content writers, really anyone that owns a business has to come to a crossroads to go, do I want to add systems? Do I want to add people? How do I want to expand my business to take on more clients, to take on more content requests, and maintain, my sanity? And so that's for me because, my first couple of years, I was taking on any project I could get. I mean, I started my freelance community on Fiverr, or I started my freelance career on Fiverr in that community where I was taking on $5, $10, $15 projects, left and right. And so I came into that scarcity mindset, and I was like, I either have to find a way to hire more people to do more work, or I need to find a system that allows me to do more work in less time. Now, as I've come along and as I've grown, I figured out how to make quality content that's worth its value, still using AI. So I don't come to a client and go, if I write this for you by hand, I'll charge you X. But if I do it with AI, I'll charge you less. It's like, no, it's still quality content. It's still the same expected outcomes that I would offer for either one. And so being able to scale, because and this is almost a copywriter club conversation. I have in my life have discovered that I'm not necessarily the most gifted manager. I've tried to be a manager in the past, and I've tried to manage other people. I'm pretty good at managing myself, but the idea of hiring a bunch of like under copywriters and kind of getting content out and helping other people get started in my business is kind of terrifying. And it's like, I like my lane. I like my world. And so being able to use a tool that can help me do that without having to worry about someone else's livelihood hanging in my balance has been really helpful for me in that way. So that's really been the main benefit for me. And then it's just opened up a whole new niche market. I don't think generative AI is going anywhere. I think it's a great place to continue to grow my own expertise and my own engagement with other users who are coming into it. I've started working with other freelancers and helping them learn how to use AI tools in their own freelancer business. And so that's become like a new outlet for me in my own like coaching and kind of equipping side of things. And so that's kind of been the best part of it.
So knowing the limitations of AI or some of these tools in particular, Brad, are there any projects that you would not use an AI tool to work on?
That is a great question. Okay. And here's where I'll get honest with you. Because I was a pastor for several years. And still here and there, I will get asked to do some pastoral ministry work, whether it's, preaching at a church or doing things here and there. I have used it to help me write sermons. I have used it to help me write out prayers for different events, things like that, or little homilies, whatever you want to call them. It's incredibly good at that. That's an ethical thing that I think we haven't even gotten into yet with some of these, whether it's sermons, whether it's graduation, commencement speeches, funerals, and eulogies. I had someone hire me about 3 months ago to help them write a eulogy for their dog. Their dog had passed away, and I have a dog that we love. It's our third child right now, so I pass no judgment on wanting to have a funeral for your dog. But I was kind of shocked at like, how do I write a eulogy for a pet? Well, the AI is right there, and I go, here's all the information they gave me about how much they love their pet. Write a eulogy for their pet, and
Do
it's
they know that you had
That
the AI
is,
write it,
oh,
or did you
absolutely.
tell
I
them?
told them, I said,
that's
here's what we did,
amazing.
here's what we made, and they were like, this is phenomenal. And I had to, like I said before, I had to navigate through, because it will get off a little bit. It'll get a little bit weird because it doesn't know how to use emotion properly a lot of the times, and so often if it's a human, which is also unique, if it's a human name of a pet, it'll start to make up human things about that pet. It'll start to say that
Oh.
they were a valid member of our family. So these are the nuances of the conversation that we take for granted because, oh yeah, my dog Max, I love her. She's a great member of our family. We want to get home and see Max. It starts to think this is a person. You're talking about it in human terms. And so I've used it for a eulogy for a pet, which was super helpful, and they loved it. At first I was nervous, and they were like, "This is incredible. You should like make a business out of this." And I was like, "I don't know. That's kind of
That's
a
a bit
bit.
niche, a bit
It's a
too
bit niche
niche.
and it's a bit sad." And so, um, things that I would not use it for, that is, and part of this is change because I don't use it for. I rarely use it for the entirety of any project. I will use it for pieces. I use it for specific spots where I get stuck or specific parts that I'm not familiar with or how to phrase things in a certain way. A lot of things, and this is where the ethical side comes in, when it comes to issues of race or gender, because I will work with clients who are working in the LGBTQ community. I'll work with clients who are working in diversity and inclusion communities. You know, great example is if a company wants to put out a statement or a web page that's talking about their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, elements like that, because they are so important and they're so vital and they have to be worded so well, I typically will stay away from using AI for that because it's just adding another layer of complexity that I don't want to have to go back and check and second guess myself on. And so that's where I really try to stay away from it in that way. I'm trying to think if there's any other places that I wouldn't use it. I mean, if it's a heavy study based or data based piece of content, a white paper. Oh, perfect example. And this goes back to Rob, what you were asking earlier about limitations. If you're creating a white paper for a startup and you're creating a product that is brand new to the market and there really is nothing like it, or you're using a lot of forecasting language for what you expect the market to do or what you expect the product sales to look like, using AI for that is not going to be helpful because it does not know how to forecast. It cannot look into the future. It can make up stuff about the future, but it can never look to the future to find or to pull back accurate information. And so I've had clients, right? I've had people I've seen online who use ChatGPT to make little summaries of stock information. And then you see a lot of this in the cryptocurrency world where they're trying to sell you on a cryptocurrency and they'll use stuff. And it's like, no, that you have to be very confident in what you're doing behind the wheel of that car to navigate that space, because you're putting yourself in a liability with your customers or your clients based off of information you did not create necessarily. You may have guided it, but you did not create it. And so that's really kind of the other one. And then the last one is just news. If it's recent news, if it's articles about certain things, I will say OpenAI has started referring to COVID-19. It
Huh.
didn't do that about 4 months ago. I don't know if they upgraded the system to read more of the internet, but it has started using words like the global COVID pandemic.
Huh.
And so it's learning, but it's not up to date. So if you went and said, write a summary of the the train derailment in Ohio, it wouldn't necessarily know what you're asking for. It would either find something from the past about some train that derailed in Ohio, or it would just make stuff up for you. And if it's Chat GPT, it may come back and say, I do not have information to write this content. So it depends on the tool you're using. It's
So
just,
it sounds like fact-based things. We just need to be
yeah,
super careful. I have seen some tools that do link back to source data, which
yes,
is really cool. ChatGPT does not. I believe Jasper does not either. And
yep,
so when it comes up with stuff like that, obviously you need to spend some time to either double check it, make sure that it's accurate,
yep.
or cut that stuff out.
And Jasper too. I haven't seen it as much lately. It used to do this a lot. It would make up citations. It would make up
Yeah,
websites,
that's awesome.
and
You
then
can't even find the citation because it's
no,
not
and
real.
it
Yeah.
and people would come back because you're on the online community and you're watching. You're like, Jasper, it wrote this content about this and it's really good, and it gave me this website as a citation to go back and read more, and it doesn't work. And it's like, yeah, it made up a URL. It just totally makes it up, but it looks good. It's very similar to if you've seen any of the news stories about generative AI in art, and it puts the Getty Images
Mhm.
kind of watermark looking
Oh,
thing.
interesting.
It's not because it's one of the things. It's literacy. It's not because it's copying a exact Getty Images photo. It has learned that a lot of photos
Yep.
on the
Have that
internet from
image, yeah.
Getty have this watermark, and so it tries to recreate it.
which
That
which has resulted in a lawsuit, I think, this week from
exactly.
Getty Images.
Yep.
Yeah, that they're going after it because clearly the data set includes some of their images. So there are
Yep.
definitely some risks here, some
Yes.
things we got to watch out for.
Big
Okay,
time.
so we've talked around some of this, but I'm curious how you're using it to position yourself as an expert or the best person to hire, or, better than the next content writer, copywriter, or in your own marketing.
Hmm. Yes, and this has changed. It's changed recently as I've become more confident in understanding the tools, understanding the potential of it, and understanding how to use it properly. Because, like we said earlier, for a long time, I would never mention it. I mean, this was like the secret thing I kept hidden away way back when nobody was ever using AI, and finally coming to a place to go, you know what? It's not going to go anywhere. I think it's here. I think it could be wildly abused, and it could become one of those things that people roll their eyes at or clients get upset about because they don't understand it. So for me, positioning myself as an expert is to say, not only as a copywriter and a content writer do I understand what this is and do I use these tools a great deal, but I also have done the time and taken the efforts to understand that. And so what I've started doing, I haven't done it yet, I'm kind of gearing myself up to do it, is to start creating more resources for, like I said, freelancers who want to use AI tools more often in their businesses, to become confident in how they use them, to become equipped to talk about it with their clients, to know what the misconceptions are and what they're going to say back to you and how to answer them appropriately. With clients, typically I can offer, and again, it's tough because it comes back to that conversation about quality and speed, right? You can have, what was it, quality, speed, and
Price.
price. You can have two, but you can't have all three. What I don't want to do, and this is tough, is to back myself into a corner to go, I use these tools to make content really good, really fast. And they go, well, you're cheaper. It's like, no, I can actually use this to position myself to help you create. And this is going back to outcome based kind of pricing, is to say, here's what we're going to make together using these tools. And also, I know how to use them really well. You could use them, and make your own content. But at the end of the day, I don't think you're going to take the time to do that because you're hiring me, because that's a big fear that I think a lot of copywriters have is they go, well, clients will just bypass me and just go straight to ChatGPT to start making content. Some might, but at the end of the day, they're so busy. They don't have time to go to ChatGPT and do the research and know how to use the prompts and know how to edit the content. So if they want good content, they need to hire someone who knows how to use the tools. And so that's where I've begun to position myself in that way, but then also position myself to help other freelancers understand how to use it as well.
So I'm not sure this is a question. Maybe it's more of a statement, and I'm curious about your thoughts about it. But to me, it feels like the time where AI was a differentiator is maybe now in the past. It's almost like the title conversion copywriter. It
Yep.
was a differentiator for the first year or two, but then pretty soon everybody adopted it, and it's kind of this thing that everybody says they are, whether they've been trained or certified or whatever. It's just this thing. And if we're not there yet with AI, I'm guessing that in the next year or so, we will be, where everybody adopts this tool and starts to use it in some way. However, some of us are going to be much better at it than others, because of the time that we put into learning, into research, into all of that. So I'm curious about your thoughts about that idea.
Yeah, I think, barring some cataclysmic AI issue, you're talking about like sci-fi apocalyptic kind of stuff that,
Sure.
if the federal government comes back and says we need to throw, and I think the European Union has already started to do some of this, where they've started to put regulation on AI tools and AI ethical considerations. Businesses like OpenAI have to put these things into place. Barring anything that happens like that would really limit the usability of the tools themselves, I think it's going to become one of those things that we just look back on and go, yeah, it was kind of scary at first, but now we just kind of take it for granted. A perfect example is, and it was again at this conference, one of the speakers at this Gen AI conference said they believed that AI integration into communications and digital media and different things like that will become much like how when we take an airplane from, if I was flying from here in Kansas City to San Francisco, there are two pilots at the steering whatever an airplane does. They're there behind the wheel. But when they take off, I mean, the whole system from A to Z is an autopilot system. It is trained. It knows exactly what to do based off the inputs put into it. But they're always there if something were to happen to take control. And they're helping take off and land alongside it. But we, as the passenger, we never even think about it. We don't think about the fact that the airplane is being driven by itself or by, signals that are being sent from different
I
places.
do. I think about that every time I take off.
Yeah,
I'm shaking my
a
boots
little
every
bit
time.
here too.
Really?
You watched one too many of those EMP movies where the planes just fly
Yeah, exactly.
fall
Yeah.
out of the sky. But I think that's a really good way to look at it. And that's the kind of the way that I look at it as an AI empowered copywriter or an AI empowered or AI equipped content writer. Sure, we might be using this AI tool, but we are always at the wheel. We're always in the process every step of the way. And we know when it goes, if it takes a crazy left turn, we can stop it, pull back, rewrite, redirect, and change it. Um, so I'm not one that's like, oh, the singularity is here, and this is the next, this is the final step of human evolution before the machines take over. My biggest fear, I'll put it this way, my biggest fear is that it's going to be a race to the bottom, that you're going to see a lot of, you know, hustle LinkedIn kind of people go make $1 billion using ChatGPT
Well,
tomorrow.
that's
And
already happening. Yeah,
yeah,
we're already there.
exactly. And it's out there. And what it's going to do, it creates this whole culture of like, using these tools is not a real way to be a real writer. You're not a real writer if you use this stuff because of this worldview on it. And it's unfortunate because there are copywriters out there who are brand new, people that are looking to leave their job to do something that they love to do. And here's a tool that they could utilize that opens the door, that helps them get involved way faster than it ever has before. And it doesn't have to be a bad thing, and it doesn't have to be a scary thing. It doesn't have to scare us. We don't have to go into this scarcity mindset again. of like, oh, that copywriter who uses AI is going to take all my jobs. If it goes that way, that's really disappointing. And that's where I find myself going, no, let's talk about it. Let's have conversations. Let's have workshops. Let's have different ways to help us learn how to use this so that we create a better final product, that we create a better culture around it.
Yeah, and where do you land for yourself as a writer, as a creative? You know, where you were asking, am I still a writer? How do you make sure that you are pulling in the creativity that makes it you and makes working with you special?
Yeah, for me, I think outside of just saying, hey, I use these tools, I know how to use these tools almost professionally at this point, is to go back to the why. I think that's what I often will tell people. Go back to the why of why you do this. Don't forget, in the midst of showing off how great these tools are, how fast you can create content, or how well you can do this as an AI writer, don't forget that the purpose of why you got into this in the first place. For me, my background is in communications and journalism. I think I took a route into pastoral ministry because I enjoyed storytelling. I enjoyed the power of story and the power of words to compel people to action, to compel people to justice and to mercy. And in that, that's where my passion for writing comes from. If I can help clients succeed by telling better stories, by telling their story better to compel their customers to action in a good, ethical, world bettering way, that's why I get up in the morning and still do the work that I do. Because yeah, I mean, you could go back and do anything at this point. And for me, it's having just another tool in my pocket where I can create better content for my clients. But I'm still Brad. I'm still the content writer, the copywriter who loves to tell stories. That's what I love to do. And this is just one way that I can do it better.
Last question from me, Brad. If you could go back, give yourself some advice as you were just starting out with AI, what would you do differently?
Hmm. I think honestly, I would probably tell myself not to be so worried about what clients would think about it. And I think under that, that's probably a top layer concern over the concern of what I said earlier at the beginning of this conversation of, am I a real writer if I'm using this? Am I a real writer if I'm using some other tool to help me generate ideas and generate content? I spend a lot of time worrying about that. I think undervaluing my time, undervaluing my abilities, because at the end of the day, in a way, we're all reusing words. We're all reusing content that, what we create is often this, combination of all the things that we have used in the past before, we've read or we've learned or we're passionate about. And AI is kind of doing that in a very practical way. It's taking information and it's making something with it. And so, in a way, we're kind of doing a little bit of the same thing. And I think that I really devalued my own worthiness as a copywriter, as a content writer. Should I be in these circles? Should I have a voice in this conversation? Should I actually, speak up about this topic or pitch for that job or go after that opportunity because my work is worth less than the person who writes it by hand? No, not at all. I think that I have a unique voice and a unique story to tell and a unique way of building content that is still just as desired and valuable as any other copywriter out there. And so that's what I would tell myself is say, don't be afraid, go into it, learn it, have fun with it, but then become an advocate.
All right, my last question, since you are clearly ahead of the times, you're a trendsetter. Since you were young, you were a trendsetter. Um,
Yes.
we've talked a lot about AI, of course, but what else do you see coming along in the next year or two? Maybe something you learned about from the conference or elsewhere that you feel like creative people should be aware of, paying attention to right now?
That is a great question. I think what's really most exciting me as far as some of this technology that's emerging and what creates a unique opportunity for creatives in general is more on the side of transparent technology. And what I mean by that is, um, we had the cryptocurrency crazy takeoff and boom and fall, and it's still, ebbing and flowing. We had the crazy NFT, like NFTs were all the rage, and, NFTs were going to change the world. And then we saw that kind of disappear. And it's still out there, but it's still, who knows what's going to happen next with that. AI could, especially generative AI content, whether it's art or writing, could follow a very similar path, but it's the underlying tools and the underlying systems of all of those that I think are going to be that next step in how we engage with technology. And so for creatives, I think understanding that consumers, and really it's everyone, because we're all consuming information and media and data, consumers are longing for authenticity. They're longing for transparency, and ultimately they're longing for something that they can get behind that can help make the world better. I think that the underlying technology of making things, especially like OpenAI, one of the things that they talked about was making the APIs for OpenAI so open that basically the Copywriter Club could create an OpenAI set that was trained only on your specific branding, messaging, tone, and content. And it could create this chatbot or this thing that a Copywriter Club person could come in and type in a question that they have about something, and the chatbot would create content specifically tailored to your thing. And that's what's so exciting, is that we're creating a faster, more accessible internet. Um, and with it being open, instead of you relying on some developer at the back room of Google to create this system, you hope that it's correct. You know that it's right. And you know that it's creating good quality content for your people. And I think that's what's going to be kind of the next stage. And with that, the call is for authenticity, for it to be genuine, for brands to be open and transparent. Those are going to coincide, I think. And that's, gosh, it's really a gray area what that's going to look like. And I can't really put it into words yet, but I think that's going to be kind of the next step of this. And again, like I said, it could be a race to the bottom. And I hope it's not. I hope it's not, because it's really a cool opportunity.
Yeah, depends on if you're a glass half full type of person or not.
Yeah. Yeah. It could be that tomorrow you wake up and you get 45 LinkedIn messages from the same person, using the same ChatGPT prompt asking you to sign up for their email. And if that happens, we're
Wait,
like, just,
yeah, I'm already getting
Yeah,
those. Already getting
let's
those.
hope that doesn't happen. Exactly.
All right. Well, Brad, for anyone listening who does want to connect with you, maybe potentially work with you on a project or learn from you about what you're doing with these tools, where can they go?
yeah, so people can find me online. I have most of my social medias are all my full name. So my parents thought that it would be really cute and unique, instead of naming me like Bradley, middle name Bartlett, to make my middle name Lee. So it'd be Brad Lee
Oh,
Bartlett.
I love
So
that.
I know that's what they said. For me, it's mostly been a life of confusion, like difficult to get into
Where's
airplanes.
Bradley? I can't find Bradley.
Yeah, I'm not pulling this up. You have no middle name. It's
Oh, I like your parents. That sounds like something I would do.
Yes. So it's created a unique way for me to call myself. So Bradlee Bartlett, Bartlett. That's all my social medias. People can find me online, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. I try to, stay pretty involved in the conversations online there. BradleyBartlett.co is my kind of website. Again, like most professional copywriters, our websites are always the last thing to actually get created. And so I've kind of had a card landing page that I've used for a couple of years now. And so they can find me there to reach out. I'm always open to having conversations with new clients. But yeah, I'm really excited for, the opportunity to talk to more freelancers and more creatives about how to use AI to take the next step in scaling their business without scaling it with humans in that way.
No more humans.
No more humans. No more. We got plenty.
Just kidding.
Awesome. Thanks,
All right.
Brad.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Before we wrap, I'm curious, Kara, what takeaway did you pull from this conversation? What stood out to you?
I think it was the way the whole conversation was framed at the beginning around Brad's questions. Is this cheating if I use these tools? Does this mean I'm even a writer? And, he was so honest with us and vulnerable, sharing those questions with us, because I think many of us are tackling similar questions and will continue to do so as we use these tools. And so it just makes me wonder if we need to reframe how we think of ourselves as writers. And that might be an individual definition of what a writer means to me in 2023, and it may be different definition for you as opposed to someone else. And just thinking about what that means, and Also, what does it mean when maybe the struggle isn't part of that conversation, at least in your client work, if it's not as hard, if you have tools that make it so much easier to deliver? Can we still call ourselves writers if that, that inevitable struggle is not there, or it just decreases? And so that was my biggest takeaway, is just that bigger question.
Yeah, what are we if not writers? And yeah, letting the tools do the work for us maybe takes that away.
Yes. What stood out to you?
So one thing that jumped out to me is when you asked Brad about how he talks about this or how he uses this to position himself, he mentioned that this was the secret thing that he kept hidden away. And I think we're getting to the point now where we can't keep this stuff secret. Yeah, it is a tool. It's not replacing who we are or what we do, but letting our clients know that we understand the tools, we understand when they're supposed to be used and maybe when they're not supposed to be used, and that we're using them intelligently is a big part of what copywriting, content creation, any kind of creation is going to be when it comes to using AI tools in the future.
Yeah, Brad called it AI literacy, and it's going to be important for all of us as writers to make sure that we are educating our prospects on how these tools work and what it actually means to use them. And then also listening to our prospects. If we're on a sales call and they're asking questions about AI tools, trying to get underneath the question and figure out, what are they really asking? What are they really concerned about? Are they up to speed, or maybe they don't really understand what's happening, and I can educate them and give them a better perspective on what's happening with these tools.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be the case for a lot of people. They don't understand them, but they want to make sure that the people that they're working with do understand them. And we're already seeing searches for copywriters for projects that are mentioning AI tools, ChatGPT, generative AI, and using these kinds of tools in some way. So it just makes a ton of sense to figure out how to use them in your own business, like what Brad's been doing for the last year or two.
Yeah, and if you can talk to those hesitations, those concerns around not wanting to be dealing with a lawsuit, those concerns your clients may have, and you can tackle it up front, as opposed to another copywriter who maybe just doesn't touch on it because they don't know, or they just don't know how to talk about it, then you're probably going to win more of those projects.
Absolutely.
All right, we want to thank Brad Bartlett for joining us on the podcast to dig into the slightly uncomfortable questions that pop up for so many of us when we're using tools like Jasper and ChatGPT. Am I still a writer? Is this still writing if it's easier and faster? All these questions are part of an ongoing conversation that will continue beyond this episode. So I'm glad that Brad was able to kick it off with us. If you want to connect with Brad, you can connect with him on his website, which is bradleebartlett.co. I'm going to spell that out: BradleeBartlett.co. You can also connect with Brad on Twitter and LinkedIn. And if you want to grow your creative business and access quarterly AI trainings, weekly copy critiques with Rob, a creative private community, join us inside the Copywriter Underground membership. And you can visit us at thecopywriterunderground.com to learn more.
And that's the end of this episode of the AI for Creative Entrepreneurs. That's a Copywriter Club podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard, please visit Apple Podcasts to leave a review of the show. Or if you're catching this on YouTube, scroll down, leave a comment below to let us know your favorite takeaway from the show. We will read every comment. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.